Ukrainian troops have destroyed Russian FPV drone operators in the Russian-occupied part of Kherson region with the use of MiG-29 fighter aircraft. The operation was carried out by the crew of a MiG-29, in coordination with the Marines of the 34th Separate Brigade of Marine Infantry in southern Kherson region. A house with Russian first-person view, FPV, drone operators who were hunting Ukrainian civilians was destroyed in the Ukrainian strike. Despite Russian offensive operations, Ukrainian forces continue to hold positions on the left bank of the Dnipro region within the Kherson region. The right bank side of Dnipro remains largely under the Russian occupation. Earlier today, a Ukrainian military official reported that Ukrainian army units repelled Russian attacks in the southern front and eliminated Russian assault group in the operation on Sunday. Ukrainian aviation has increased strikes on Russian army positions in the occupied territories as well as in Russia's border regions. As a result of strikes carried out with Western-made aerial bombs, a significant number of personnel and military equipment of the occupying Russian army have been destroyed. It should be noted that more than 168 combat engagements with Russian troops took place across the front on October 19. Russia continued its relentless air bombardments across Ukraine earlier over the weekend, injuring two people after drones targeted a petrol station in the Zerikny district of Sumy in northeast Ukraine.
As the Russians shove more and more regiments and brigades into the narrow salient northeast of the fortress city of Pokrovsk, their casualties are increasing. Different sources disagree over exactly how much Russian casualties are increasing. They don't disagree that more Russians are dying, getting maimed, or going missing, many of them in and around the chaotic 40 square kilometer salient. Euromaidan press media outlet recalls, a leaked Russian document provides a baseline for Russian losses between the 1st of January and the 1st of September this year. According to the document, Russian forces suffered 281,550 casualties in those 245 days, 86,744 killed in action, 33,996 missing in action, 158,529 wounded in action, 2,311 captured. That's 35,000 casualties a month through the early weeks of Russia's renewed push toward Pokrovsk. Of these 35,000 casualties, several thousand were probably temporary as the more lightly wounded recuperated and returned to service. Given that Russia recruited nearly 32,000 fresh troops a month over the same 8 months, there's a good chance the Kremlin enjoyed a small troop surplus throughout much of 2025. But Russian commanders' determination to capture Pokrovsk, one of the last urban strongpoints between the Russians and the free twin cities of Kramatorsk and Sloviansk, has erased that surplus. Euromaidan Press says, now the Russians are almost certainly losing more troops than they're recruiting every month. It's unclear how deep the deficit is, however. Another leaked document detailing Russian casualties for the 4th of September lists 995 total casualties, around half of them from the center grouping of forces fighting around Pokrovsk. Incredibly, this is a slightly higher count than the official Ukrainian count of Russian losses for the same day. The Ukrainian General Staff, which could be forgiven for projecting rosier figures, tallied just 810 Russian casualties on the 4th of September. The casualty rate among Russian field armies has probably increased since then. On the Pokrovsk direction, Russian troops activated attacks across the entire direction, suffering 18 to 20% greater losses over the last week. The Ukrainian Center for Defense Strategies reported, if Ukrainian Center for Defense Strategies is correct, the Russians are losing around 1,200 troops a day. If the typical ratios of killed to wounded to missing hold, 1,200 total casualties could mean 400 confirmed killed in action a day. Analysts widely assume most missing Russian soldiers are also dead somewhere along the 1,100-kilometer front line, but at least one analyst has good reason to believe Russian losses are currently much greater. Analyst Andrew Perpetua visually confirmed 825 Russian killed in action in 5 days starting on the 9th of October. That's 165 dead Russians every day on average, Euromaidan Press says. But Perpetua stressed that his count is probably low, as there are surely many Russian combat deaths that don't leave behind photographic or video evidence. Perpetua himself estimated he observes between 15% and 30% of Russian losses. Being conservative, that could mean that Russia's battlefield deaths are approaching 500 a day. Applying the usual ratios, that could mean 1,000 wounded and 250 missing. Again, most of the missing are probably dead. The problem for the Kremlin is that there's no evidence. It has boosted recruitment to match the deepening losses. Euromaidan Press says, if the Russian military is still adding 32,000 fresh troops a month, it's likely running a manpower deficit of around 20,000 troops a month that it can't replace.